Well, I never thought when I was growing up that I would like to be a pain in the neck of my government. I actually thought I wanted to be in my government. I thought I wanted to serve my government. I thought I wanted to be a diplomat and someone in the State Department. And so it doesn't feel good to be a pain in the neck to your government. I want to love my government. I want to be proud of my government. And I was listening to Hillary Clinton yesterday when she was giving a talk about China and how awful China was. And there are a lot of things that are awful about China and its human rights. But she said the United States is a beacon of hope and democracy for the world. And you know, my heart sinks when I hear this, because I would love the United States to be a beacon for hope and democracy in the world. And I think that so many of our brothers and sisters in this country do believe that our country is a beacon for hope and freedom in the world. And that also makes me very sad, because it means they really don't know what we have been up to. And when I hear people talk today about Iraq, I'm so proud to be in a room of people that care about Iraq, because that's not a lot of people. And the first time I went to Iraq was when Saddam Hussein was still in power. And I remember being very scared to go there. And it was very difficult to speak to people openly because they were afraid of their government. But what amazed me is that they were people that were so educated and so bright and so full of life. And we ended up hiring a group of women to work with in Iraq. And one of the women, when I first met them to talk about working with us, she said, "Oh, I'm a journalist in Iraq, and I studied American literature. And I wonder, who is your favorite black poet in the United States right now?" And she named off all the ones that she loved. And women after women, one was an architect, and one was an engineer, and one was a doctor, and they were so brilliant. And I was amazed that in this country, ruled by a brutal dictatorship, so many women had been able to go to not only college, but postgraduate degrees, all for nothing. Not a cent did they pay for that. And you found also that people were coming from all over the Middle East to get educated in Iraq. And then I look today at what has happened to those women we worked with. And each one of them has a story more horrible than the other to tell you. About their husbands being kidnapped and tortured, about their children being kidnapped and tortured, rape, which was so uncommon in Iraq. And most of them, who love their country so dearly, have had to flee their country and become one out of the 5 Iraqis who have been forced to either flee to neighboring Jordan or Syria or internally displaced. 1 to 2 million widows now living in Iraq, a nation that has been destroyed by us. And I would venture to say many people in this country think that we have actually helped the women in Iraq. And they probably think that we have helped the women in Afghanistan as well. And while we're talking about Iraq, let's remember that it is the wars. And while the US is fighting wars on multiple fronts, we have to fight against wars on multiple fronts. And in Afghanistan, the justification, part of it, of going to war was because the women were so oppressed. And when you see, after spending $320 million a day in Afghanistan, we have done nothing to decrease the absolute poverty that the Afghan people live in. And there was a very telling report just put out by a group called Save the Children that looked at 160 countries and came to the conclusion that Afghanistan was the worst place in the world to be a mother. Imagine. The worst place in the world to be a mother, because 1 out of 8 women died in childbirth or in pregnancy, and 1 out of 4 children did not reach the age of 5. And that is after being invaded by the richest country in the world and spending our hard-earned tax dollars on this war. And so when I hear Hillary Clinton talk about what a beacon we are of freedom and democracy, it breaks my heart. And it also breaks my heart to think what we could be doing with that money, what a fraction of that money used in the right way would do to help women not only in Iraq and Afghanistan, not only around the world, but right here in the United States of America and right here in Washington, D.C. And when we look at the financial crisis, where people are losing their homes by the millions, where people can't find jobs, where young people can't afford an education anymore. And when you see the talk about cutting the deficit and how they're talking about cutting Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and the little bit of a safety net that we have left in this country, why aren't we in the hundreds of thousands, if not in the millions, out in the street and saying, end the damn wars and bring those war dollars home to rebuild America? Going to be worse with the Republicans in the control in the House, and I don't think so. I think now is a new time for us, and we've got to seize this new time and seize whatever openings we have. Because with Republicans in control of Congress, it means that many of our allies who would not get out and protest with us when Democrats were in control of everything will now perhaps be more willing to come out and join us. And it also means that we have to work locally and build from city to city, from town to town, from state to state. And we in a coalition now have groups that are dedicated to going into our cities, making alliances with the real victims of this economic crisis, going to our town councils, to our mayors, demanding they pass resolutions saying bring the war dollars home, and organizing for when the mayors come together in June in Baltimore, close to where many of us are living here, and be inside and outside that convention center where those mayors are going to be meeting to say the American people from city to city around this country are demanding that that money go to our communities, to our cities, to the people who are hurting here. So let's organize to pass those resolutions in our cities and in our neighboring cities so that we can go to the mayor's conference with hundreds and hundreds of resolutions having been passed. And I also just want to mention that we were recently approached by a Marine who came back from Iraq. He was 30 years as a sheriff, retired sheriff and a veteran, and said, I couldn't stand being in Iraq and seeing the way my government was relating to the people there, and especially to the women. For International Women's Day, will Code Pink join with me to take a delegation to Iraq to show how we should be relating to the people there? Let's bring money for the domestic women's shelters in Iraq. Let's bring medicines for the women who are suffering from increased levels of cancer due to our uses of depleted uranium. Let's bring help to the Christian women who are now being attacked because of the ethnic conflict that we have helped to create. And so we said, yes, we want to join you. Anybody interested in perhaps going with us on that delegation, please see me. But I think it is wonderful that a Marine has come forward to join with a group with a reputation like Code Pink to say, let's work together. And so I say, as we move forward, let's think of the strange bedfellows that we can work with. Let's think with people perhaps in the Tea Party that are sick of seeing all this money going into wars that are unwinnable. Let's reach out wherever we can so that we, not Hillary Clinton, can look forward in the future of saying that we do really believe that we live in a country where our government represents a beacon for hope and democracy. Thank you.